Okay, hi class. So Assalamualaikum and good day everyone. Okay, so this will be our last chapter for your subject engineering statistics. So this is our last chapter, but I will make it this video part by part. Okay. So for the first video here, I will explain only for the first agendas or the first objective. Okay. Alright. So yeah. Without further ado, so this is chapter 9, which is the title of the chapter 9 is about correlation and also simple regression. Okay, so before you go to what's the correlation and so on, so they have the objective. Okay, you need to know first the objective for this chapter. Okay, so they have 4 objectives here. Alright, so we start with the first one. Okay, the first one is in the end of the chapter, you'll be able to identify the independent variable x. Okay, they have 2 variables, independent variable and also dependent variable. So for independent variable, we use as x, and for the dependent, we use y. And then after that, you will be able also to plot the scatter diagrams. Okay, so means that you need to know first the independent and also the dependent variable. Okay, you need to know first these two, then you can able to plot a scatter diagram. And then after you plot the scatter diagram, you will able to recognize the type or the category of the relationship between the two variables just now. Okay, so for objective number 1, they have three another small objectives. So that's why I will make it the video part by part. So for this video, I will just I will brief you on the objective number 1. Okay, even though it's just one objective, but they have 3 things that you need to know lah. Okay, so then for objective number 2 here is to compute and interpret the value of correlation coefficient. So this also will be explained in this video. Okay, the correlation coefficient. And then the third one is in the end of the chapter, you will be able to determine the regression line equation of y on x using the least square method. So they have a method that we will use here to find the regression equation, and then we will compute the expected value of y for a given. So actually class, word expected here is not referring to mean. Okay, I understand that maybe some of you will confuse because we already used the word of expected value before in the previous chapter, and the meaning for expected value here actually is mean, right, before this, but this one is not mean. Expected here is the number that we estimate. Okay, expected that is not exactly the number, it's just we expect. We expect here means that the number that we estimate lah. So the expected value is y. We will estimate or we will expect the value of y for a given value of x. Okay, alright. So this chapter is not about the expected value just now. The previous chapter. Okay. Alright, so for the objective number 4 is you able to make it the inferences about B. So B here is the slope. Okay, later you will see. Okay, B here is mean the slope. What is mean by slope? Okay, slope is a gradient. Okay, ataupun in Malay we call it as kecerunan. Okay, gradient and slope. Okay, so there are 4 objectives. So as I said just now, I will cover only objective number 1 and objective number 2 in this video. Okay, so we will go to variable first. Okay, as I mentioned before, we have 2 variables. So the first one is independent, and we use the alphabet x to indicate the independent, and we use y to indicate the dependent variables. So sometimes you need also to know the other's name for these 2 variables. So sometimes we use as a word predator to represent independent. Okay, predator to represent independent variable, and also sometimes we use a word of response to replace as dependent. Maksudnya, in other words, dependent and also response is the same thing. Independent and predator is the same thing. Okay, so I give you example here. So maybe you still blur how to, because you need to know which one is x, which one is y based on the question. Okay, so Okay, let's we see equation for 1 first. So a lecturer might want to look at the relationship. Okay, so we want to actually, the purpose of, you need to know variable here first before we go to the scatter diagram, because to sketch the scatter diagram, you need to know the variable first. You need to identify which one the variable independent and which one the dependent. So that's why we need to know this one first. Later on, then you can solve, you can plot the scatter diagram. After that, we go to the correlation. Okay, so we want to see the relationship between the two variables. So a lecturer might want to look at the relationship between the number of hours a student spends studying and the final examination. So they have two variables here, which is, the first one is number of hours that students spend, and the second variable here is a final examination marks. So these two, you want to see the relationship. But that one will be in the scatter diagram. But now you need to identify first what is the independent variable and what is the dependent variable. So if you read it again, the question, okay, you read again. If you can't see, you read again. So class, we know that our marks or our task or our anything that we do is depend on the effort that we put, is it? Okay, betul. Apa yang kita buat selama ni mesti dia bergantung ataupun it relate or is selari concurrent with our effort. Same like this example one. So if you spend more time for studying, of course you will get good marks. So can you see that? What I can say here, your final marks is depend. Okay, class, hear carefully. It depend on how many hours that you spend. Okay, I repeat again. Final examination marks will be depend on the how many hours that you spend. So means that the final examination is your Y, which is dependent. Okay, the final examination mark will be your dependent variable. So I use Y only, okay class? So in short, I use Y. So I hope that you can understand. Y is stand for dependent and X is stand for independent. And the hours, okay, number of hours here is independent. Okay, so you can see the relation between these two variables. Okay, of course, our marks will be depend on how many hours that we spend. So for number 2, okay, I just write the two variable instead of to make it a sentence. So I just write two variable here directly. The price and age of car. Okay, the price and age of car. When you want to buy the second hand car, for example, anything that second hand ataupun barang tu lama, for example pre-love or bundle, means that it will be is already used by someone or is already 4 years lah kan, masih lama. So the price will be reduced, is it? Okay, the price will be reduced. Of course, only it's not accepted lah for houses or for land. Kalau rumah dengan tanah, usually makin lama makin mahal lah. Okay, but now we talk about car. Okay, we talk about car. So, age of car and price. So, class, the price will be depend on the age of car. Is it? Betul? Maksudnya harga kereta akan berubah ataupun is depend or bergantung kepada berapa tahun kereta tu. Maksudnya kalau lah harga, if the car already 9 years, of course the price will be reduced, is it? Okay. So the price here will be your dependent Y and age of car will be your independent. Okay. Okay, next, number 3, level of fat, lemak, and blood pressure. So class, when we have the level of fat in our body is too high, okay, it will be affect your blood pressure. Dia bukan blood pressure tinggi baru level of fat naik, tak. It will be when your fat is increases, that will be lead to your increases in blood pressure. So means that level of fat will be affect. So means that ataupun in other words I can say that your blood pressure it depend on your level of fat. Tapi tak sedap kan? Tak sedap lah ayat tu sebab takkan kita, I mean it's not a positive one, it's negative. So level of fat will be affect your blood pressure. So that's mean that your level of fat is your X, which is independent, and but your Y will be your dependent. Okay, your blood pressure will be it will be changes. It depend on the level of fat lah. Kalau level of fat reduce ataupun normal or stable, so that will be your blood pressure also will be stable. So it depend on the level of fat. Okay, the last one, number of computer jobs per day and the central processor unit or CPU, time required. So, if they have many jobs that you need to do for a day, of course, your CPU will need to have a more time. Okay, so means that the time will be depend on the number of jobs. So the number of job here is X and your time here is Y. Okay, class. So I hope that you clear on independent and also dependent. Okay, so we go to the second one. In the second one, in the we just focus for objective number 1. Okay, class. So this will be the second things in the objective number 1. So which is a scatter diagrams. So class, scatter diagram actually is a diagram that we plot. Okay, later on I will show you. Okay, actually it's scatter diagrams here is to use the to see the relationship between the, okay, we want to see or we want to determine whether they have a linear relationship between the two variables just now. Two variable here is referring to dependent and also dependent variable just now lah. So we want to see whether they have exist or not relationship between these two variables. So that the purpose of that we use that we sketch the scatter diagram. Okay, so that's what I thought just now. I mentioned just now that you need to know first. You need to identify first your variable. Then we want to see the relationship. We need to use or we need to draw a scatter diagram. Okay, after that, okay, this is we want to know or we want just a glance lah. Okay, just a quick glance. We want to see whether they have a linearity property. We want to see whether they have a relationship or not. That's all. But then for correlation is we want to check or we want to determine the strength of the relationship just now. Okay, I hope that you can distinguish between the scatter diagram objective and also correlation objective. Scatter diagram, the purpose that we use, we draw a scatter diagram is we want to see whether they have the relationship or not. That's all. Nothing more than that. When we plot the graph, we only see. But then for correlation, okay, the title of our chapter, correlation, is we want to determine the strength of the relationship just now. Kita nak kira ataupun we want to know the strength. So when it comes to strength, they have a calculation, of course. Means that, strength means they have a range, they have a value. So to indicate lah whether this one strength or not. This one is the level of strength. Okay, later on I will show you. Okay, but this is the purpose of correlation. So we have also the word of, we call it as correlation coefficient. Okay, correlation coefficient. So this coefficient that we want to calculate. Okay, this coefficient that represent the strength. Okay, so we have two category lah, or two type. So we know that we have population and also we have a sample. So for population, we use the symbol of rho. Okay, we call this one macam P kan. So it's look like P, but it's not P. This is how we write. It's not exactly P lah. It's something like P, but it's not exactly P. So you may search rho. Okay, rho. RHO is, I'm not mistaken. Right. So we use this symbol, and for sample we use R. That's all. So the range is fixed already. The range of the correlation coefficient is only between -1 and 1. It cannot be less than -1. It cannot be more than 1. If you calculate, okay, let's say you calculate and then you get 1.2, there must be have something wrong in your calculation. Okay, it cannot be more than 1 and it cannot be less than negative. It cannot be negative 1.2. Cannot. Tak boleh. Okay, class? It's already fits in this range. So they have a meaning lah. They have meaning. If we get -1, what's the meaning? Okay, so later, okay, I will show you here in this slide. So we want to relate. We want to relate between the scatter diagram and also the correlation. Okay, class, here we have a few categories. So basically they have 6 categories. So I show you in this slide here. Okay, so the first graph here, we name it as a perfect positive. Okay, perfect positive. Alright, and of course that is linear. Okay, perfect positive linear correlation. So you can see here, this is a graph. Okay, suppose this is Y. Okay, this is Y. Okay, then you can see that you have two axes here, which is X and Y. And as we done it in the previous slide, X is the independent and Y is dependent. And then, of course, in this question, you will given to you the set of data X and Y. So then you need to plot. Okay, you need to plot. So you can see for the first category here, you can see that all points here is in the straight line, exactly in the straight line. Okay, just saya tak tulis, I didn't use a ruler, but actually this is a straight line. So all points lies on the straight line, straight line, and that slopes. Okay, slope, I already mentioned just now, slope is a gradient. Gradient means kecerunan. So this is what we call as gradient. You can see this is straight line, and then they have some angle ataupun dia punya, it depend on the gradient lah. Okay, if you didn't remember what is the gradient or what is the slope, you may find out in the Google by yourself. So if we slope upward, okay, you can see upward means is from left to right, from left, here is left to right, and it's upward. So this is called as a perfect. Perfect means, why perfect? Because it's exactly all point, semua titik is in on straight line. Semua titik on a straight line. So we call it as a perfect positive. Positive because it's upward. Positive because it's upward. And of course it's a linear because we can see that it's a straight line. Okay, so that's the meaning, that's the elaboration on the why we call it as a perfect positive linear. Okay, then for the second graph here, you can see that they have a straight line, of course, same thing, but now it's on downward. Downward means is from left to right, suppose from left to right. Okay, from left to right also. Downward is from, here is upward. Increasing, yes, increasing. Here is downward, it's decreasing. Okay, when it's decreasing, it's called as downward lah. And all points, of course, still in the straight line. So it will be a perfect. Okay, one thing is a perfect already. Then we want to see whether it's positive or negative. So when it downward, decreasing, so we call it as a negative. Okay, and of course it's a linear. You can see that it's a straight line, of course. Okay. Okay. So for these two, okay, before I go to the third graph, for these two, it's a perfect. The graph is a perfect. So the R, or the correlation coefficient for this positive perfect or perfect positive, is R equal to 1. Okay, is R equal to 1. Actually, they have a calculation on R. Later on I will show you, but this is just something like macam congak lah. Kalau you dapat, if we get the perfect positive, usually the R will be 1. And if you get the graph of perfect negative, your R will be negative 1. Okay. Alright, so now the third graph here is only positive. Why? Why they have no word of perfect? Because you can see that, okay, when you sketch here, for example, you sketch, this is still linear, okay, because it's upward, okay, it's increasing. So it's still linear, and it's still positive because it's upward, but this is not a perfect because they have no, not all points, okay, not all points in the straight line, okay, alright, and the R will be here is more than 0. It's not exactly equal to 1, it's just more than 0. So maybe 0 0.9, maybe 0 0.8. So actually they have a calculation to get your R. Okay. Okay, next. Another three category here that we have here is negative linear. So it's similar like the previous one, which is positive linear, but it's a downward lah. Okay, downward. So this is negative, and the R here is negative, less than 0. The R is negative, less than 0. It will be negative lah maksudnya. Okay. Alright, so the another two here, actually the first one, okay, this one is a non-linear, and this one is non-linear. Okay, so basically it's similar. Both are not linear. Okay, both are not linear because they have no straight line here. But for this graph is no linear. It's memang they have no. We cannot say anything because it's too scattered. It's too spread. So they have no linear relation between x and y. But for this one we call as non-linear because of we still can sketch a graph. I mean, we still can, we can draw a line between this graph and, because, okay, for this one, you cannot draw a line. I don't know what line of this, okay, but this one, we still can sketch a line. And this line actually is a parabola, okay, parabola or parabolic. So, parabola or parabolic is a non-linear. So that's the difference, no linear and non-linear. Non-linear is, we still can sketch, but it's exactly not a linear graph lah. But for no linear, they have no any line that we can sketch. Tak ada pun line kita boleh attach between this line, between this point. And for these two, which is for the non-linear and non-linear, the R is near to 0. R approach 0. That will be the name. So this is the facts. Okay, when you calculate, okay, for example, you get the equation, you calculate, and then you get your R. I mean the scatter diagram is non-linear, for example, no linear or non-linear. But when you calculate your R, you get your R is equal to 0.9, for example. Okay, class, 0.9 is not near to 0. 0.9 actually is near to 1 already. So means that they have something wrong in your calculation. Okay, so you will use this fact, the R is less than 0, near to 0, to help you when you want to calculate the R. Okay, alright, so now it's time for us to calculate the R. Okay, we call it as a linear correlation coefficient. We want to calculate the correlation coefficient. So this is, okay, I just copy and paste the formula. Okay, so this is the formula to get your R. Okay, SS here is stand for sum of square. Okay, alright, so SSXY and then over square root of SSXY, and what is this SSXY? So this is the formula to get SSXY, SSXX. This is the formula to get SSYY, and this is the formula to get SSXY. Okay, class. Right. So, yes, I will stop it here, and I will proceed with the example. Tapi tak ada semua, I mean, they have no person or they have no, you are not looking for my example, is it? So I didn't put a link lah, for example. So you can find out by yourself, you can do it by yourself by referring to your textbook or the PDF. Okay, that's all. So I will continue the next objective in the next video.